The day I missed the bus to school. Have you ever had that moment when time seems to stop, but the world keeps moving? Imagine watching your school bus drive away without you on it. What would you do? Today's story will take you on a roller coaster of emotions and unexpected adventures that all began with missing the bus. If you love learning English through engaging stories, hit that subscribe button right now and join our story-driven English community. Let's dive into today's tale. The day I missed the bus to school. The loud, persistent beeping of my alarm clock penetrated my dreams. I groaned and stretched my arm out from under the warm blankets to silence the annoying noise. Through half-opened eyes I glanced at the time. 7:15 a.m. I had exactly 45 minutes before the school bus would arrive at my stop. Plenty of time, I mumbled to myself, closing my eyes for what I promised would be just 5 more minutes. When I opened my eyes again, the bright red numbers on my clock displayed 7:48 a.m. I blinked once, twice, my brain slowly processing the information. Suddenly the realization hit me like a bucket of ice water. "Oh no," I shouted, leaping out of bed so fast I got tangled in my blankets and tumbled onto the floor with a loud thud. "The bus comes at 8. Whoa!" I had 12 minutes. 12 minutes to shower, dress, eat breakfast, brush my teeth, pack my bag, and sprint to the bus stop that was a 7-minute walk from my house. Impossible. Maybe for most people, but I was about to attempt the impossible morning rush of all time. I skipped the shower. No time for that luxury today. I pulled on the first clothes I found in my drawer, a mismatched blue sock and a red one, jeans with a small stain on the knee, hopefully no one would notice, and a wrinkled t-shirt that smelled acceptable enough. My hair looked like a bird, had been building a nest in it overnight, but a quick splash of water and frantic combing somewhat tamed the wild mess. As I hopped down the stairs, still putting on my second shoe, my mother looked up from her coffee with a raised eyebrow. "Late again, Alex?" she asked, though it wasn't really a question. Her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "Just a little behind schedule," I replied, grabbing a banana and stuffing it in my pocket for later. No time for a proper breakfast. The bus comes in. I checked my watch and my heart nearly stopped. 6 minutes, Mom shook her head. "This wouldn't happen if you set your alarm earlier." My alarm was set perfectly, I protested, hastily filling my water bottle. I just gave myself a 5-minute snooze extension that accidentally turned into a 30-minute hibernation. "That's not how perfectly works," Mom replied with a small smile. "Do you want me to drive you?" I considered her offer for approximately half a second. Being driven to school by your mother at 16 years old wasn't exactly cool. Plus, Mom's ancient car made strange growling noises that the entire school would definitely hear. "No thanks," I said, throwing random books into my backpack. "I'll make it." I grabbed my half-prepared lunch from the refrigerator, a sandwich with just one slice of bread folded over some cheese because I had no time to make it properly, and stuffed it into my bag alongside my jumbled textbooks and crumpled homework assignments. "Toothbrush," Mom called as I raced toward the door. I skidded to a halt, ran back upstairs, brushed my teeth in what must have been a world record time of 12 seconds, and sprinted back down. "Bye, love you," I shouted over my shoulder, already halfway out. "The door. Don't forget you have a math test today." Mom's voice followed me out into the crisp morning air. "Math test? What math test?" My stomach dropped as I vaguely remembered Mr. Peterson mentioning something about fractions and decimals last week. Great. Not only was I about to miss the bus, but I was also completely unprepared for a test that probably counted for a significant portion of my grade. I checked my watch again as I ran down our driveway. 56 a.m. The bus stop was at the end of our street, around the corner and down another block. Under normal circumstances, it was a 7-minute walk. But these weren't normal circumstances. My backpack bounced wildly against my back as I ran, probably bruising my shoulders in the process. My untied shoelace threatened to trip me with every step. My lungs burned as I gasped for air, mentally calculating the shortest route to the bus stop. As I rounded the corner of our street, I saw the big yellow school bus already at the stop. The doors were open, and the last student was climbing aboard. I was still a block away. "Wait!" I screamed, waving my arms frantically above my head, like a person signaling for rescue on a deserted island. "Wait for me!" Either the bus driver didn't hear my desperate cries, or he chose to ignore them. The doors closed with a decisive hiss that I could hear even from a distance. The large vehicle pulled away from the curb, black exhaust puffing out as it accelerated down the road. I continued running, foolishly believing I could somehow catch up to a motorized vehicle that was already speeding away. After about 30 seconds of this futile chase, I stopped, bent over with my hands on my knees, gasping for breath as I watched the bus disappear around the next corner. I had missed the bus to school. For the third time this month, standing there in the middle of the sidewalk, lungs burning and sweat beginning to form despite the cool morning air, I weighed my options. I could walk back home and ask Mom for a ride after all, enduring both her "I told you so" expression and the embarrassment of arriving at school in her ancient, growling car. Or I could walk to school. My school, Westlake High, was approximately 4 miles from my house. Walking would take over an hour, which meant I'd miss at least my first class. Ironically, math class, with the test I wasn't prepared for anyway. Maybe missing it wasn't such a bad thing after all. I could claim I needed an extra day to study. No, that wouldn't work. Mr. Peterson was notorious for giving harder makeup tests to students who missed the original ones. Something about discouraging convenient absences, he called it. As I stood, contemplating my limited options, a familiar voice called out from behind me. "Missed the bus again, Alex?" I turned to see Mrs. Jenkins, our elderly neighbor, watering the vibrant flowers in her front yard. Her white hair was tied back in a neat bun, and despite the early hour she was already dressed immaculately in pressed slacks and a floral blouse. "Unfortunately, yes," I admitted with a sigh. "I overslept," Mrs. Jenkins chuckled. "You young people and your sleeping habits. In my day we were up before the roosters." "Do you happen to know what time it is?" I asked, realizing I had forgotten to check my watch in my panic. She glanced at her wristwatch. "It's 8:05, dear. School started at 8:30. If I started walking now, I'd still be late, but maybe not catastrophically so." "I guess I'll walk," I said, more to myself than to Mrs. Jenkins. "Walk 4 miles to Westlake?" Mrs. Jenkins shook her head. "That's quite a journey on foot. You know, my granddaughter is visiting and she's heading into town for some errands. Perhaps she could drop you off. She's just having breakfast now." My face lit up at this unexpected stroke of luck. "Really? That would be amazing. Come on." Then Mrs. Jenkins waved me toward her house. I'll introduce you. Her name is Lisa, and she's about 10 years older than you. I followed Mrs. Jenkins into her home, which smelled like freshly baked cinnamon rolls. My stomach growled loudly, reminding me that a banana stuffed in my pocket didn't constitute a proper breakfast. In the kitchen, a young woman with short, dark hair sat at the table, sipping coffee and reading something on her tablet. She looked up as we entered. "Lisa, this is Alex from next door," Mrs. Jenkins explained. "Poor thing missed the school bus and needs a ride to Westlake High. You're heading into town anyway, aren't you?" Lisa smiled warmly. "Of course, no problem. I just need to finish my coffee and we can go." She gestured to the plate of cinnamon rolls in the center of the table. "Help yourself while you wait. Grandma makes the best cinnamon rolls in the county." I didn't need to be told twice. As I bit into the warm, gooey pastry, I silently thanked whatever twist of fate had caused me to miss the bus today. Maybe this morning wasn't going to be a disaster after all. "So, what grade are you in?" Lisa asked, as I devoured the cinnamon roll with embarrassing speed. "10th," I replied between bites. "I have a math test first period that I'm definitely not ready for." "Ah, math," Lisa nodded. "Never my strong suit either. What kind of math?" "Algebra. We're covering quadratic equations." "Oh, I might be able to help with that," Lisa said, putting down her coffee. "I'm an architect, so I actually use that stuff. Want a quick review while we drive?" This day was getting better by the minute. "That would be amazing." After finishing breakfast and thanking Mrs. Jenkins profusely for both the food and arranging the ride, I followed Lisa to her car, a sleek, modern vehicle that was the complete opposite of my mother's ancient machine. "Nice car," I commented, as I climbed into the passenger seat, carefully placing my backpack at my feet. "Thanks," Lisa replied. "It's a hybrid. Good for the environment and my wallet." As we drove toward school, Lisa gave me a surprisingly clear explanation of quadratic equations. She even pulled over briefly to draw some examples on a notepad she kept in her glove compartment. For the first time, the concepts actually made sense to me. "You're a much better teacher than Mr. Peterson," I told her honestly. "He just writes formulas on the board and expects us to absorb them through osmosis or something." Lisa laughed. "Different people learn in different ways. Some teachers forget that." She checked her watch. "We're making good time. You should get there before the first bell." We were about halfway to school when Lisa's car made a strange sound, a sort of high-pitched whine followed by a concerning thunk. "That doesn't sound good," I said, anxiety creeping back into my chest. Lisa frowned and pressed gently on the gas pedal. The car lurched forward and then began to slow despite her increasing pressure on the accelerator. "No, no, no," Lisa muttered as she steered the faltering vehicle toward the side of the road. "Not today." The car rolled to a complete stop and Lisa tried restarting it. The engine made a pathetic whirring sound but refused to engage. "I'm so sorry, Alex," Lisa said, looking genuinely distressed. "I just had this serviced last week. They said everything was fine." I checked my watch. 8:22 a.m. School started in 8 minutes and we were still about 2 miles away. My brief moment of optimism evaporated like morning dew in the summer sun. Okay, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "It's not your fault. I appreciate the ride and the math help." Lisa was already on her phone calling for roadside assistance. From her side of the conversation, I gathered it would be at least 30 minutes before help arrived. "I can walk from here," I told her after she hung up. It's not that far. I feel terrible about this, Lisa said. Let me at least call the school and explain why you're late. It wasn't your fault. Well, not this part anyway, she added with a small smile. While Lisa made the call, I gathered my things and prepared for the walk. The morning had warmed up, which was a small blessing at least. The school secretary says they'll note that you had car trouble, Lisa reported after ending the call. But you should still hurry. If you jog a bit, you might make it before first. Period ends. I thanked Lisa again and set off at a brisk pace. After a few minutes, I broke into a light jog, mindful of the weight of my backpack and the fact that I had skipped my regular breakfast. The last thing I needed was to arrive at school lightheaded from hunger. As I jogged, I mentally reviewed the math concepts Lisa had explained. Quadratic equations suddenly seemed less intimidating. Maybe I could pass this test after all, if I made it to school in time. I was about half a mile from school when disaster struck again. Dark clouds that had been gathering on the horizon unleashed their contents without warning. One minute the sky was overcast but dry. The next, rain was pouring down in sheets. I had no umbrella, no raincoat, nothing to shield me from the sudden deluge. Within seconds, I was soaked to the skin. My carefully combed hair plastered to my forehead. My non-waterproof backpack absorbing water like a sponge, along with all my books and homework inside it. Perfect, I muttered, slowing to a walk. There was no point in running now. I was already as wet as I could possibly get, and school would have started regardless. The rain continued to pour as I trudged the remaining distance. By the time I reached the front steps of Westlake High, I resembled a drowned rat more than a high school student. Water squished in my shoes with every step, and my clothes clung uncomfortably to my skin. I pushed open the heavy front door and stepped into the empty hallway. The first period was well underway. I could hear teachers' voices coming from classrooms as I made my way, dripping to the office to get a late slip. Mrs. Simmons, the school secretary, looked up as I squished into the office, leaving a trail of water behind me. "Alex Thompson," she said, raising an eyebrow. "We got a call about car trouble, but they didn't mention you'd be swimming to school." "The car broke down, and then it started raining," I explained, water dripping from my nose onto the carpet. Mrs. Simmons handed me a towel from a drawer in her desk. Apparently, I wasn't the first student to arrive at school resembling a water feature. "You're lucky," she said, as she filled out my late slip. "Mr. Peterson is giving his test during the second half of class today, so if you hurry, you might still be able to take it with everyone else." My heart sank. So much for avoiding the test today. I took the late slip from Mrs. Simmons, thanked her for the towel, and made my way to math class, leaving damp footprints on the linoleum floor. When I entered Mr. Peterson's classroom, 25 pairs of eyes immediately turned to stare at me. I must have been quite a sight. Wet hair, wet clothes, wet everything. "Ah, Mr. Thompson," Mr. Peterson said, pausing his lecture. "How kind of you to join us. I was just reviewing key concepts before the test." I handed him my late slip. "Sorry, I'm late. The bus, and then a car, and then the rain." Yes, Mr. Peterson interrupted, clearly not interested in my tale of transportation woes. "Take your seat quickly. We start the test in 10 minutes. I squeezed past my classmates to reach my desk in the back row. My best friend Jamie gave me a sympathetic look as I sat down. "Rough morning," she whispered as Mr. Peterson turned back to the board. "You have no idea," I replied, pulling my math notebook from my backpack. The pages were damp around the edges, but still usable. "But I actually understand quadratic equations now." Jamie looked surprised. "How did that happen? Yesterday you were completely lost." I briefly explained about Lisa and her impromptu math lesson during our ill-fated drive. "So missing the bus was kind of a good thing?" Jamie asked. "Maybe," I conceded, though I could have done without the rain shower. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat loudly, and we fell silent. He continued his review, and I was surprised to find that I could follow along, thanks to Lisa's clear explanations. When it was time for the test, I felt strangely calm, despite my damp clothes and the chill that was setting in from sitting in air conditioning while wet. As I read through the problems, I realized I knew how to solve them. Lisa's examples came back to me, and I worked through each question methodically. I finished the test with 5 minutes to spare, which had never happened to me in a math class before. As I handed in my paper, Mr. Peterson gave me a curious look. "You seem unusually confident today, Mr. Thompson," he remarked. "I had a good teacher," I replied with a small smile, thinking of Lisa. The rest of the school day passed in a blur of damp discomfort. My clothes eventually dried, but they dried, stiff and wrinkled. My hair, once it dried, stuck out at odd angles that no amount of water from the bathroom sink could tame. The sandwich I had hastily prepared that morning was soggy from the rain that had seeped into my backpack, so I had to buy lunch from the cafeteria. By the time the final bell rang, I was exhausted but oddly satisfied. Despite everything, oversleeping, missing the bus, the car breaking down, getting caught in the rain, I had made it through the day and possibly even aced my math test. As I walked out of school, I was surprised to see Lisa waiting in the parking lot, leaning against her now repaired car. "Lisa," I called, walking over to her. "What are you doing here?" "I felt bad about the car breaking down this morning," she explained. "So I thought I'd offer you a ride home. Plus, I want to hear how that math test went." I grinned. "I think I did really well, actually, thanks to you." "That's great," Lisa exclaimed. "See, sometimes disasters turn into opportunities." As we drove home, I recounted the full adventure of my day, and Lisa laughed at all the right parts. When she dropped me off at my house, she handed me a small card. "If you ever need more help with math, or if you miss the bus again," she said, with a wink, "give me a call. I'm staying with my grandmother for the next month while my apartment is being renovated." I thanked her and waved as she drove away, feeling like I had made a new friend. When I walked into my house, Mom was waiting. In the kitchen, a knowing look on her face. "Mrs. Jenkins called," she said before I could speak. "And then the school called. Quite an adventure you had today." I dropped my backpack on the floor with a sigh. "Yeah, but you know what? It turned out okay." Mom smiled. "Sometimes the worst mornings lead to the best days. How did your math test go?" "I think I aced it," I said, still somewhat surprised by this fact. "Lisa, Mrs. Jenkins's granddaughter, is an architect, and she explained everything so clearly during our drive." "Well, that's wonderful," Mom replied, "but I hope you don't plan to miss the bus regularly as a learning strategy." I laughed. "Definitely. Don't." though I might take Lisa up on her offer of math tutoring. That night, as I lay in bed setting not one but 3 alarm clocks for the next morning, I reflected on the day. Missing the bus had set off a chain of events that led to making a new friend, possibly improving my math grade, and learning that sometimes the worst beginnings can have unexpectedly positive outcomes. Of course, I still plan to catch the bus tomorrow. Some adventures are better not repeated too often. The next morning, I woke up to the first alarm, got ready with plenty of time to spare, and walked to the bus stop early. As I stood waiting, I saw a familiar figure approaching, Lisa out for a morning jog. "Catching the bus today?" she asked with a smile as she paused her run. "Absolutely," I replied, though I have to admit, yesterday turned out better than expected. Lisa nodded. "Life's like that sometimes. The detours often take us where we need to go." The yellow school bus appeared around the corner, and I picked up my backpack. "Thanks again for everything yesterday." "Anytime," Lisa replied. "Have a good day." At school, as I climbed aboard the bus and found a seat, I couldn't help but smile. Missing the bus had taught me that sometimes the unexpected path is exactly the journey you need to take. And as for my math test, I got an A-, the best math grade I had received all year. Mr. Peterson even wrote a note at the top. "Whatever you did differently, keep doing it." I plan to do exactly that, minus the oversleeping, the mad rush, the broken-down car, and the sudden rainstorm, of course. Some parts of adventures are better left as one-time experiences, and that's the end of our story, the day I missed the bus to school. Did you enjoy this adventure? Has something similar ever happened to you? Share your own missing the bus stories in the comments below. If you enjoyed learning English with us today, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Story Driven English for a new story every week that will help you improve your English while being entertained. Click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. And why not share this video with a friend who's also learning English? Remember, the best way to learn a language is through stories. Until next time, keep reading, keep listening, and keep speaking English. Key vocabulary, repeated throughout. Alarm clock. A clock that wakes someone up at a set time, oversleep. To sleep longer than intended, rush. To move or do something quickly, bus stop. A place where buses regularly stop for passengers, panic. Sudden, overwhelming fear or anxiety late, after the expected time backpack. A bag carried on the back for books and supplies, embarrassed, feeling awkward, self-conscious, or ashamed, quadratic equations. A type of math problem containing squared variables, unexpected, not anticipated or predicted, deluge. A heavy downpour of rain-soaked, completely wet dripping, falling in drops, usually water. Opportunity, a favorable time or chance for success, adventure. An exciting or unusual experience, detour. A route that is different from the usual or planned route, catastrophic. Involving great damage or suffering, impromptu. Done without preparation or planning, damp. Slightly wet, methodically. Done in a systematic, orderly manner.